Cosmo Sharf.
And I'm Summer Perry.
And today we are joined by Evelyn Paul. Evelyn is a shamanic practitioner and soul evolution guide. Her practice integrates shamanic, hermetic, Eastern spiritual principles and healing techniques into a practical and applicable system. Her goal is to provide her clients with the tools to manifest their soul purpose, transform their life, and ensure sustainable balance and harmony into all aspects of their being. Evelyn, it is such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be here. I think so highly of you and Summer, and I just love your consciousness. We spent some wonderful time, and I've always been addicted to your energy because it's always so vibrant and multidimensional. And so it's such a joy to actually meet formally like this. So this is really great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, we've known each other for a few years now, and
Years,
one
yeah.
of the things that I've enjoyed about you is your passion and interest in all things esoteric and mystical and magical. And now, well, when I met you, you were doing, you were, a private chef, and now you've transitioned more into the shamanic path, shamanic
Yeah,
practitioner. And
right.
I'd love to start off if you could share a little bit about how you made that transition and what inspired you to go into that world.
Sure. Well, I've been a chef I studied classically as a chef, and I practiced for over 20 years. Had a pretty niche client base, high profile clients and celebrities. And, over the last, I would say almost a decade now, but closer to the last 7 years in particular, I started really, I would say I awakened my soul to my own spiritual path. And at first it was difficult because, I was really still focused on understanding myself on a soul level, but also practically having to make a living. I took some time and to study abroad esoteric teachings and mindfulness practices. But at the end of the day, we live in a system where you have to earn a living, and all that love and light stuff can only go so far to pay your bills.
Sure.
So I had to go back into, that world. But I stayed within my own personal practice. On my time off, I would continue to go abroad and study. And I found then I started just integrating that organically into my work with my clients. To the chagrin sometimes of some of the staff at home, because they would be like, what is chef doing with this energy she's talking about and charging the food, and why is there crystals in the kitchen, and why does she have to do a clearing with sage in our boss's house before she starts cooking. It's just it's just the only way I knew how to be. And then finally, in particular last year, and this was something that as I said, I stayed true to my spiritual awareness of myself, and I still in with my work. Like, I think you could only really teach or do what you sell what you are. And even as a chef, my focus started shifting just subtly but organically as someone that was a little more holistic with my approach on food, and the importance of connecting with food and nature energy and nature spirit to support and sustain us. And last year, there was this loud voice in my ears, the beginning of last year in particular, that said that I had to make a choice, and that I had to go. I could hear it almost as vividly as I'm talking to you. I do a lot of meditation and shamanic journey, but in meditation in particular, the voice kept saying, it's time for you to really embody what this to be true about you. And the way I was cooking, as much as I love my clients, it was very focused on just the body. And so I really did, I started feeling disconnected from just that compartmentalization of wellness with just focusing on food and the body. And so I had a very tough conversation with one of my amazing client, beautiful human, beautiful soul. that was a very lucrative contract. I I sat them down and I said, my soul is calling me. Quite literally is what I said, and I have to listen. We cried and hugged, and they were like, "Oh no!" And I said, I have to listen. I have to listen. And so we parted ways, and I went back overseas to Asia, to India, to Indonesia, to study more and go deeper into shamanic, my shamanic training. And I just stopped. I stopped everything, and I came. I went to just find more of a structure around some of the things that I already knew to be true. Like even before, when you and I met, we met over like the Magic of Kabbalah book you were reading, and as you said, I've always been interested in esoteric. I'd always been able to, well, not always, but for a while I had been able to perceive other dimensions of reality, or as we all actually have the ability to do if we tune in. And for me, for a while, it was kind of baffling, It was like, it kind of scared me at times because I would have these types of mystical experiences that I couldn't explain. No one could explain to me. I couldn't find a book to explain it. The only books I did find that were relevant, that resonated in my core about it, were books on like esotericism and like books about magic, or books about like even quantum mechanics. So those made sense of these very strange experiences I was having spontaneously and organically. And so when I went to further my shamanic practice, it was more to get like a structure around the things that were unexplained. They were happening already, and I wanted like a way to be able to control and repeat these experiences in a way that they were accessible to me at my command, as opposed to happening because I had reached a specific state in meditation, or in a deep detox cleanse, or a deep like journey inside, and they would happen and then they would be gone, and I would have to wait for them to happen again. So when I did that, I came back, and I just went back. I decided, oh well, this is what I am already anyway. This is what I do for myself, and let's try to make a living at it. And I was really fortunate because the people in my life, even my clients, they already knew me as the kind of like airy-fairy chef anyway. I was already clearing their houses and, putting energy in food. And so some of them started already supporting that. They're like, well, what are you doing now? We want, and so now I have this is where I am. And this is what I'm doing full time.
Amazing. Well, it's great to hear that you had the courage to follow your heart and listen to your intuition and really make that decision, which I imagine was probably pretty hard.
At this first time it was. And one of the things that's important, which is one of the reasons I'm glad we're talking about this, and as far as talking about the new economy and in consciousness. The first time I did the leap, it was hard. But I had leapt before in a different way. But the one thing that happened, it was so amazing, because I'm pretty assertive with spirituality too. I'm kind of a spoiled child with the universe because I'm bossy. It's like, I'm jumping, you better have a net. I dare all the stuff I read and I study, all the esoteric wisdoms. For me, I could give a flying rat's butt about the book if I can't apply it. And I'm like a mad spiritual scientist. So I'm always like daring the application, the wisdom in the personal application. So it's like, I could, I don't know, end up in a mental ward, possibly. But what if I just bend reality in a way that, in this case now, I'm like, I joke and I say I make money from thin air. Because I'm like, I'm jumping, I'm leaving my clients. All this, a 6-figure contract significantly. And I'm like, no historical background in this professionally, but my heart, my soul is telling me this is who I am. And I dared the universe, and they showed up. They know me. I go, like, even what I do sometimes when I do my manifestation evocation, I'll be like, and you know me, I'm not playing, okay? Don't mess with me. And so I say this to say it is not as serious and as, like, as difficult. The universe is a lot of fun because it's your universe, or it's really horrible because it's also your universe. In my universe, I'm pretty assertive and I'm the boss in a way that honors myself represented in everything, but also asserting the fact that I can create it. And so I did another jump during COVID that was interesting because I had one of my old clients pop back up on the radar and just offered me a wad of money to do some cooking for a short period of time, right when COVID was hitting. It was like, offered me this like temporary but big, substantial contract. And again, it was like when COVID hit right around that time, I was like having this moment of, like everyone else, like, what is COVID? What is really happening? For me, not necessarily what was happening with COVID and the physicality, but what is manifesting to me internally that is represented by this thing. And that would mean that if I had taken that gig, I would have had no time to understand that. And so I jumped again and I said no, when I had no idea what was happening.
Well, on the COVID note, which is of course very relevant right now, what's the shamanic perspective of what's going on in the world, and maybe some other of the major events like the Black Lives Matter movement, and even earlier back the Australian wildfires? There seems to be a lot of chaos and craziness and fear building up. And what is this amounting to? Where do you think this is heading?
Well, from my personal shamanic perspective, because just to clarify, as a shaman, we're all shamans. It just means one who sees. So my perspective as a shaman is very different to somebody else's, and the way they see. But so back to even, when COVID started, for me, it crippled me temporarily. Because I know for a fact from my own direct experience that nothing that's manifesting outside is not manifested inside of me first. And I wanted to understand it. And so I did step back significantly. I cocooned myself and I turned off my phone and I wouldn't talk I just kept going inside, journeying shamanically to get answers within my body and my practice. And something started it's like the little dots started connecting. I started connecting with my lungs through COVID because I wanted to understand, how does COVID relate to my lungs in my body, because it has a respiratory, effect, right? An impact, a negative respiratory impact. And for me, shamanically, my lungs line up. For me, the upper dimension of my lungs is the spirit, right? And the intermediary between me and the body. So that was one thing. And I started making that correlation. It was really interesting that, oh, wow, my spirit is struggling here. COVID is manifesting to let me know that there is something broken within my spirit. And now it's manifesting in many different ways, including now that I'm stuck. I have these boundaries. I can't leave. I can't move to Greece. I had planned on. And that was really, I thought, oh, wow, that's enlightening. Wow, okay, so that's what's happening. It's my spirit. And then when the Black Lives Matter hit, again, I was like, this is interesting. Okay, let's figure this out again. And let's go back inside. First of all, obviously, on a very surface level, for me, a tree hugger, this may sound insensitive to a lot of people, and I hope it doesn't come the wrong way, because I have COVID clients, and I feel a lot of compassion for the human collective. But for the nature family, my nature family, my trees, my animals, COVID was so healing for that. And COVID was so, when I say COVID, the effect, the cause, so COVID is the cause, and the effect is the fact that, children, imagine being born in China for the very first time, a baby being born in China to clean air. Never in what, 50 years maybe or more. And so I wasn't, I really appreciated the pause for the natural environment. But when Black Lives Matter happened, at first, my first response was like, I do believe that there's so many injustices that have to be resolved. And I generally avoid the collective media. And so I went, okay, at first I was like, I don't want to see, this is like, we're at a point where humanity is cosmically designed to evolve in consciousness and unite. So I thought, okay, what is happening here? Maybe this is a distraction. I tend to just go into shamanically inside and turn off the news. But then I turned on and I tuned in and I took it back in shamanically. And all of a sudden, there was this realization that something was lining up. George Floyd, what he said as he was passing away was, I can't breathe.
Right.
Yes.
COVID affects the lungs and our ability to breathe. But then it took me immediately back to the rainforest in the Amazon last year.
Burning. Yeah.
The lungs of the planet can't breathe. The planet was screaming to us, I can't breathe. And we just didn't hear it. So it's funny how the planet works, right? Because we're just cells. It's just the microcosm, right? We're the microcosm of a macrocosm. So it's like a delayed response, right? So the planet is not breathing. We're cells. COVID then hits all of us, but then we still can't hear it. And here you have one cell verbalizing what the planet has been saying. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Our spirit is broken. The spirit is lungs, it's air, it's breath. Mm-hmm. The collective spirit. And so many different things. You look at what happened, you think about COVID, the breath. We're able to take a breath through COVID because we didn't drive, we were quarantined. And finally, we were able to clear our thoughts. So the next time that it was injustices and Black men and women and within all the women have been, not just, Black lives that have been like horrifically traumatized, women and children being molested and brutalized in the last coming to light through the Me Too matter. All of these things that have been happening like within the LGBT movement. But we're typically, before we had the forced quarantine and during COVID, we were so busy working 80 hours a week or more that we just kind of went, oh, that's terrible. And we clicked to some yoga music or some like Netflix that could fuck comedy because you're too tired to have clarity. But the pause in COVID gave us clarity, which is again, lungs and breath and spirit to go, wait a minute, that just happened. That's wrong. You finally had the clarity to see all the things that were wrong. You're able to pause because you're home. The environment is cleaner. And then we're acting on it now, right? But it's all one cell. This is one organism. And what affects the planet will affect you always. And we're finally, hopefully, especially your generation, more than mine, I'm almost 50, is starting to see that.
Well, that's a beautiful insight, really.
Yes, I had a question cool. too, as far as the shamanic view of what's going on, and if you have any thoughts or insights on what fire represents as a shaman because of the fires burning the lungs of the planet, and then COVID being an inflammatory condition that causes inflammation in the lungs, and then the response to George Floyd's murder, this anger that's just burning inside everyone that
and the riots.
Flames up, and then the riots and people burning buildings. What does fire represent shamanically?
Well, fire has a lot to do with the will. Like fire is actually the wand, the magician's will. But so it has a lot to do with our willpower, right? It has a lot to do with anger, but But in this case, what you're seeing is, granted, there's some what it's come to now, right? So it was like the catalysts that were, things were so already building, the lungs of the planet last year, the fires in Australia. But we are seeing now, like, anger is a very righteous emotion. It's a very holistically, on a metaphysical plane, anger is it's an important emotion for change, right? It's like saying a volcano has no place. We would not have landmass without a volcano. So fire is like the collective volcano forcing change. And I'm really inspired, as you know, by this righteous, right anger. But the point is to focus that magician's wand, that will for change, that Mars energy to combat injustice, because it's necessary. The revolution is not a revolution. They lied if it's peaceful. They all lied. I'm telling you. Like, Jesus was no punk. There was like, he was kick, you know, if you're a Christian, which, you know, I'm more of a metaphysical, spiritual person, but there was people, even in the very Bible, he was kicking over the temple tables whatever. But fire is important. The thing that is happening now is that on a microcosmic level, it looks really dual. If you were to look at the individual cells, it looks like anger, it looks like separation, it looks like rage, but if you looked at the entire scope of evolution of consciousness, it has to happen. It's a birth. A woman, planet Earth, is giving birth to a new consciousness. And it feels awful. Have you ever tried getting a woman giving birth to calm down? Right. She will probably break your arm. You know, it's like, but at the end of it, I mean, we're switching from the age of Pisces, which was about duality, to the age of Aquarius, which was about egalitarianism and unity and innovation but we're giving birth to ourselves, a new consciousness. And quite frankly, it's supposed to be pretty yucky. It's not gonna if it doesn't feel like this, it's not the change. It's not real change.
Yeah, one of the things
is how, you know, that's my perspective.
It's like the fire is the catalyst.
Yes, the magician's wand.
You mentioned to me on a call previously when the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd event was underway, and in real time we were reacting to it, and you were talking about how this is the unhealed trauma that is rising to the surface, and how that is part of the necessary part of our transition to a healthier, happier world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It has to clear.
Yeah.
It has to come up to clear. And I have to, you know, just with all the optimism, that's not the only one that's going to come up to clear. That's why it's so important right now to get centered and develop and understand your inner self. You, this incredible creator, where your control system is inside. Find a spiritual practice, whatever your background, because we are shifting, and shifts feel uncomfortable if you're not aware and you're not in resonance with the shift. And all the systems that are inorganic and not for the good of all and harm of none, they're going to change. Now, if we were coming into the age of Pisces, I would be a little terrified, because Pisces was very much about duality and secrecy. You know, I'm sure we probably at some point were we obviously incarnated in several lifetimes in the age of Pisces, but this new evolution. It started to, you see the kids, you see them not, you know, with the gender fluidity and understanding that hermetic principles, as you know, it's like the principle of gender exists in all. There's no male or female. To see how that plays out even in a dual space and especially I have so much compassion and gratitude for the LGBT movement that's really not conforming to gender norms, because that's actually part of the understanding of the hermetic principles of gender, even though it's manifested in much more of a microcosmic way. But it's all, you started seeing these changes already with your generation and a little bit, the one a little younger. We saw the women's movement with Me Too coming up. This is all like, you can start seeing teasers of what we're moving into.
Yeah, it's interesting oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you continue. It's okay.
It's interesting to make that, to thread the connection between all these various movements, right? You have the Me Too, and then Black Lives Matter, and then COVID, not really a movement, but the event rather.
Yeah. Well, it's a movement for the planet, for the environment. It's the environment's movement. Yeah.
Well said. And essentially, these are bringing up and calling into question all of the various systems of oppression, whether it's against women or against Black people or against any other, kind of type of person.
Against this, Jewish people.
Yeah, well,
that's
like,
like the Holocaust. Hello.
Right.
And some of the things that still continue, So this is the apocalypse, and people always go, the apocalypse. Oh my gosh.
Right.
It's funny when COVID first hit the collective. I have a pretty warped sense of humor, so I would greet everyone with "Happy Apocalypse," because I was like, yes, because as esotericists, we know what the apocalypse mean, and so it was like that was a real honest, righteous greeting for me, like happy unveiling, happy truth revealed, happy revelations in the Bible, because it just means this is everything that's happening now with the justice system having to shift and restructure, so it's a lot more for the good of all and harm of none. The medical system, it's interesting because since COVID, my practice has definitely picked up. I have clients that are doctors that coming to me going, we don't have answers. And I have, one of my advisors for my business is a medical, very well respected, prominent medical doctor who advises us for Safe Holistic. But yeah, the medical system, that's one that I guess the truth started being unveiled a little bit with the disclosure they give you at the beginning or the end of their 2-second ads that have a 30-second disclosure of all the toxins. Right? I guess that's one aspect.
And the side effects that are just the
The
effects.
voice and fast forward that's listing all the side effects, and the last one is and death.
Yeah. but with and the doctors, I love doctors because a lot of them, so many of them don't know. But all of the systems, the old paradigm systems, are coming up to clear. They're gonna look really ugly. The clearing is never pretty. Otherwise, it's not a real one. Mm-hmm. The political system, holy cow. One of the reasons I'm going to say something so controversial. I love Donald Trump, and I'll tell you why. Not because I think he's an amazing person. We know what he is.
Yeah.
But finally, what do we have?
Transparency.
We have a wolf in wolf's clothing at the White House. Finally. There is no more the wolf in sheep's clothing that we have had since most of the presidents, since Lincoln and JFK, arguably. Yes, I said it out loud. Because at the end of the day, the lobbyists kind of run the system. And Donald showed up and he was like, yeah, I suck. Oh, yeah, right. And I'm here.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, but he's forcing especially the generation that's coming up now. He's forcing us to look at how much power we give to politicians. He's making us look at our shadow. He's showing us the shadow embodied in our politics. For sure. Because he's our collective baby. We gave birth to that consciousness.
Absolutely. And
yeah, it shows
all
us
of
a
us.
mirror of what we valued as a society.
And to your point about what you were saying earlier, when COVID started to happen, and you were asking the question of what, where is this within me, right? Because there's a reflection of the outside world that is on the inside. So we can make that same, we could do that same thought experiment with Trump, where we can ask ourselves, where is the Trump within us? And that's coming from a very different headspace and mindset compared to, oh, screw Trump, and hating on Trump and being obsessed with every little tweet and every screwed up thing that he's doing.
And empowering him. Like
Right.
it's empowering the mirror. It's like you can't fix the makeup on your face by fixing it in the mirror. You have to fix it on your face. And it empowers that person. For me, when another aspect of COVID was like, I was planning to move to Greece, back to Greece this year. And all of a sudden I couldn't go. And I thought I had these boundaries on these borders, and I love to travel. And boy, when you take away my ability to travel, you just it's a different Evelyn. And I started asking myself, where are my borders and my boundaries? Where are my judgments in myself that now I am facing my borders where I'm stuck within my judgments, making me have to look at how do I judge am I seeing myself just as a woman, just as a Black woman, just as a, all of the things like, the way I see another person. I may say, oh yeah, we're all one. And I know we're one humanity. And, I do lectures on humanity is not a race. And the history of, our collective history. But I thought, am I really applying that? Do I really see that white person as just like a lighter version of myself? Or even though I'm saying it, am I really embodying that? Because that's a
Right.
border, The fact that I don't see a man, I see myself as just a woman, that's a border. That's like, the fact that I see myself as not an earthling, but like a human, that's a border. And that's like a bit, for me, it was like, how do I embody being a whole earthling so that I don't have the borders that are now keeping me stuck? So there's so many levels to empower yourself when you turn it inside of yourself.
Well, tell me about what you mean by there is no race. And this is an interesting a question that I've been wrestling with, where we say that, we're all one consciousness, and like we all come from the same source, but the truth, but of course we all have different colored skin, and we look different. And now the Black Lives Matter event is happening, and it seems to be creating even further polarization and this black versus white paradigm. But how do you wrestle with this idea that on the one hand we do look different, but ultimately we are part of the same organism?
Well, we are scientifically, and everybody that knows how the system, how it's dividing people know. I mean, I do lectures. I'm an amateur historian. That my research for myself as an amateur historian started on African history before colonization and slavery. And my reason for that was that I wanted to get myself as well as other people of color to see past slavery so that they can, because if you don't know your past, your real past, you get stuck in the victim space of like, I'm a victim or I was a victim. So I wanted to understand my place, before I was, now deemed a victim that is like having to transcend, my trauma,
Right.
to ground myself in really what I was before this very short stint in history, as far as that African people are concerned. And the deeper I went scientifically, because then I did all this research, a lot of the research was done, and a lot of the information, I even have a reading list that I send to people, but we're done by European scholars before the turn of the last century that were very openly speaking about human history, African history, before we really got into the whole division by that, especially when you have what slavery really was is for profit. Division to this day is about profit, making you believe that you're not just a human that evolved from climate
Exactly.
is just for profit, for sure. And so I can tell you, and it's not, we don't have enough time in this podcast to do that. We are really scientifically one group of people. That's one race for a fact. One, and it's just this beautiful thing of evolution of this planet evolving herself and her cells to survive in whatever environments. And someone
Wow.
profited from that by making
Wow.
us believe that we
Wow.
are, and that makes a lot of money. It
Wow.
sells a lot of things. But really, at the end of the day, and I get this, it's wonderful. It started in a wonderful place where I wanted to really understand myself in this timeline as a woman of color, my history of being empowered before victimhood, and then it brought me to the space of, wow, we really are one race. But then it really lined up with my consciousness, and I'll tell you, the more you go inside of yourself, race disappears. Separation and division is like, what? It's not even in existence. And so it's a fact. I'm not saying it to make myself feel good or you feel good. It's just scientifically. And maybe we'll do a podcast on that, or I can send you some reading materials for people that are interested. But
Sure.
that's the point. We have to get past that BS. We're not anybody. We really literally scientifically facts, as the kids say, the same people.
Yes, we learned this
Facts.
in anthropology and biology that it literally the amount of melanin in your skin is only related to the climate from which your ancestors resided. So it's really ridiculous, but
Period.
you're right. It's an expired marketing campaign that needs to just be.
It's an expired,
We're done
and
with
let's
it.
expire that once and for
Yeah,
all.
for
But
real.
when you say, I find the polarization that's happening with Black Lives Matter are still part of like the people that support not that support Donald Trump's policies. It's like I have like I live on a small farmhouse, for example. For example, I'm one of the few Black people in my little community. Some of them are hardcore Republicans, by the way. We share dinners and stuff for holiday. But also the kids if you look at the protesters, they're so multicultural.
Sure.
There's an aspect of the marketing of division for profit that will tell you it's polarized. But really, is it up close polarized?
Right, exactly.
Is it in person polarized? Or is it just a reseeding of like, how they take one drug for diabetes, and when it's worn out, as far as the trademark, they repackage it for like, I don't know, like,
Weight
what is
loss.
that thing? Weight loss.
yeah.
And then they like
Erectile
resell it.
dysfunction,
Yeah, or whatever. Exactly. So it's like, and then you have this, no, I made a pledge, to myself for my evolution to retire that, because they will get you again if you go back into this duality. They will get you again, and they will sell you security systems again. They will sell you ways to protect yourself from your neighbor, and not just black and white, Asian versus Asian, and so on and so forth. It's this, as you said, expired marketing, and it's time for us to
That's a
do
good way
away
of
with
putting
it
it.
once and for all.
That's
Thank you, Summer. That is
Well,
a great way to put it.
It was totally your idea, and it resonated with me. And it brought up something too, the issues that we've been having with climate change and with race. And for those of us who are educated and we know that the amount of melanin in your skin and your hair and your eyes comes from the climate from where your ancestors resided, wonder what that correlation means for humanity and for earthlings with the trouble with the climate and these the discomfort and the emotions with race and discrimination.
It's a big one. It's a big one. Because it's on so many levels. I can, as I said, I take everything inside of myself, and I have to recognize to meet people where they are. one of the things I do teach and I share as much as I can't explain it if you're looking at it in the outside space. You're never going to make sense of it if you're looking at it in the mirror. And the mirror is just the reflection, which is either a mirror or it's a mirror of your awareness or your ignorance to who you really are. And so when I've tried to explain this to people and they're trying to make sense of it because it seems like such a big topic and it seems so complicated and complex because they're looking at it in the mirror. And as soon as they start projecting that consciousness back inside through short little mindful practices too. I mean, the shifts when you flip the questions inside of yourself are like almost instant.
Right.
You start.
It's like dream analysis.
That's my answer. So in like small shifts, small practices, big consciousness shifts. You will not make sense of it because there's a, so let me just grab some water 1 second.
Good idea.
You're not going to make sense of it in the mirror. Never. I can't explain it to you. That's why I teach enlightenment now. And in the class, I tell my clients, I have very little theory at the beginning, like, okay, we're just going to, okay, but let's jump in. Because then they go, oh, wow.
Right. It's like
wow.
when you have a dream, every element in the dream is about you and what's going on inside of you internally.
It's about you, yeah.
And we're sharing this collective dream out here, out there.
Right.
So we have to look inside of ourselves to see what it means.
And and the changes are rapid. I mean, the awareness is pretty rapid. Like once you start shifting, and that's like that's my big why and mission right now is to like get people to focus quickly inside so that the outside chaos does not affect them.
Can you tell us about Enlightenment now?
Yeah, it's an awesome spiritual coaching program. I would say, that's the closest way to describe it. That I got in a shamanic journey. I learned it shamanically, and it teaches people to shift their consciousness inside of their bodies, quite literally. Going with one of the theme of the course is the kingdom of God is within, as a literal application to evolve your consciousness, and then where you could then shift and bend the reality on the outside by finding the controls on the inside, quite literally. And it's with different practices. There are 4 modules, and the shifts are immediate. People start seeing, because as soon as you activate the controls inside, literally, we've heard the kingdom of God. We hear the kingdom of God is within. Go into your heart. Well, we give you the practical application of that, and then you just, you become your own healer. You become your own guru. You don't need me. You don't need, you won't, because I don't do the course so you can come back for more classes. It's like 4 modules, and please, if you don't get it, don't call me, because the point is, I joke, but you get it, because you learn to heal yourself. You learn to solve your own problems.
That's awesome. With the image that came to mind as you were describing that was sort of like a switchboard with lots of little gears and dials, but like on the inside where you're playing with that.
Correct.
And the lack of knowledge in our education system, in our culture of that, first of all, that's even possible. And then of course, how to do that is sort of
by design, by the way.
Yeah, it's kind of missing.
By design, because that's what the initiate schools are, right? And there's, that's why we study some of the esoteric truths, right? I believe in applying all of them because it's for those who know, they know. One of the practices you actually do find the switchboards you were describing, and you can move and edit and move things and plug things in one of the practices. But it's by design. But the time is over for that. As you said, it's retired. Time to retire the old paradigms, and And Enlightenment now does allow you to, gives you, I love it because the students are not, I have a few shamans doing the course, but most of the people that are doing it are regular people. I have an attorney, doctor, PhD student, a marketing executive, that because it meets you where you are, but it's really like these practical but deep esoteric, because I use a lot of hermetic principles and shamanic principles, and it just meets you where you are. But it's like they're pretty profound, the shifts, because I'm not telling you, I'm not shifting you, you're shifting yourself. Because I'm not lazy, but I really don't have the patience to find your truth for you. But I just sit there at the gate going, basically, essentially, the course is just a gatekeeper going, this way, come back and tell me what you find,
Right.
Exactly.
So
That's the funny thing is, like, we already know all the answers to life's biggest challenges, but they're locked inside or buried or hidden under so many layers of false belief systems or toxic
Correct.
food, or all the various ways in
Correct.
which humanity has been kept at this sort of dull lower
Yeah.
state of evolution that is
Yeah.
in the process of changing right now.
Yeah. And it all had its place. I mean, gosh, it all had its place. I'm grateful for all of it, It was wonderful to be ignorant. Sometimes you're like, I was like, and then you're not, and then you're like, whoa, wow, I was ignorant. Interesting.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point, which I was talking to my friend a few days ago, and I have virtually 100% unplugged myself from news and like reading and hearing about what's going on. And he was kind of the opposite. He's like super just on top of it, like really in the weeds on
Bless
all
his
the
heart.
various things. And we were having a conversation, and it's like, of course that phrase like ignorance is bliss came up, and we're laughing about it. And I'm curious what you make of that, because I know we share the same virtue of just kind of staying away from the news and really doing our best to
Yeah.
not let that intake that information. But to what degree is there the right balance of ignorance is bliss versus being really aware and informed on what's going on in the world?
Well, I do a few, especially now. I've watched them. I'll watch the news in and out, but more from the as you know, I don't even have social media. So, and people always say, "Well, how are you going to get business?" I'm like, because I get business. If you think the news is what you need, then you're right. I don't think it's what I need, and I'm right. So, hey, if you
That's
think
funny.
that keeps
Yeah.
you informed, you're 100% right. For us, we
Sure.
know we don't need the news to keep us
Yeah.
informed, and we're right. And it works for our world and our universe.
Yeah, that's
So
that's awesome.
it's
Yeah, what I love about
it's like
that
you're
answer,
right. You need to be informed.
it
Go ahead. I'm
transcends the
sorry.
yeah, sorry, there's a delay here a little bit. It
Okay.
transcends the duality of like, does it have to be this or that? Well, if it's good for you, it's good for you. If it's good for me, it's good for me. So there's not really any,
Yeah.
I mean, in that
Yeah.
world that you're articulating, there isn't any necessarily like one singular truth. It's like the truth is relative
Oh,
for each
no.
person.
Right. And it's too exhausting to try to it's just like you're right. The one thing I know as creators, that's what we are, you're always right. You're never wrong. Ever wrong. Never wrong. But you're not always right for me.
Well, that's the distinction. That's the distinction.
You're always right.
For
Whatever
yourself.
you think, you're right. For yourself, you're right. Whatever you think of the world, you're right. It's not the what I think of the world for is right for me as well. And I don't try to. There's too many opinions, and the news is no longer about news. In my opinion, it's about pundits, and and so it's just like reality's turned into this big old swimming pool of pundits, and I really don't. I'm not really nourished by engaging in people's truths. I'm focused on what's true for me and the universe that I live in and continue to co-create. that's in harmony and balance, and for the good of all and harm of none. And that incorporates my shadow, because I love the parts of me that allows me to grow and allows me to be angry and use curse words and have a meltdown sometimes, and it's just yeah.
Right. The shadow is super important. Summer, are we gonna?
Yes. Oh, I'm just curious about some more work that you're doing, but I can wait if we want to talk about this some more.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
what, you want a teaser?
I'm really curious, because I think that it's very relevant right now for everyone. And I think it's extremely important what you're doing with homeless youth. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that and have you tell us about what you're doing with the homeless youth.
Yeah. Well, part of my practice, I joke, I say I take from the rich and give to the poor. So I do a lot of, obviously my business, I have to make a living, is for profit. But then I spend a good core of my time for nonprofit. And my focus in particular is for homeless young people, as well as battered women and children, homeless women and children. And right now I am launching in August a Enlightenment Now version for a homeless shelter for young people in Atlanta, because I think it's so critical to, give them tools that are, self-authored, and it just, if you just give them those tools, it can completely transform their lives. I'm a former homeless teen, so for me, I knew that I went through being a homeless teenager so that I could actually teach homeless teens how to thrive and how to use their, the challenge, the PhD of the experience that they embodied through being homeless, as a way to catapult their, their growth, their evolution. And I feel really excited, because that's really where I get my nourishment from, is doing that give back. And I'm working with this other center here, Solomon House, which is a center for homeless, battered women and children, to do something similar in the end of September month, the beginning of October month. I'm sorry, to also do the same, because Enlightenment Now, it's, we're doing it now for clients that are paying, and I do it for a niche, some of my clients that pay, quite a bit for the one-on-one access to me. We're launching in the fall an online program that's also paid, but I give that program away to those centers for the residents there, because they're part of us, they're part of me, and when they're empowered, our whole community thrives, collectively. And it costs us a lot more money to have everybody thriving and sovereign, and empowered. So
right.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
That's what I'm doing.
That's so wonderful, and it's so important. And I know that the lives of every individual you're touching is going to be very grateful, and they're going to remember you. And COVID really...
Oh, but I'm remembering them. They give me so much. They give me purpose. Oh my gosh. And young people are so, I would say my mentors are younger than the age that are under 25. Like my grandson, who's 4, being my biggest mentor. But yeah, young people, I love them, because they don't have the programming, They're so open. They're still so magical, They're just... I have a young man, he's now in his 20, and he did the artwork for me for a children's book that I'm writing, and I haven't published yet. But anyway, I wrote it. And when we met when he was 16 years old. He's like one of my niece's best friends. And we sit, Cosmo, it's kind of like, even, when the three of us sit together, it's like we travel the galaxy of ideas and possibilities tangibly. We create whole systems within a space of an hour, we just journey, we time travel. The universe opens up, and I'm only able to have those experiences with younger people that are under the age of, certainly a lot younger than me, because they're just still so magical. They're still so connected to their inner self and their own inner cosmos. And it's so much more nourishing to do the work I do with that group than with my peer group.
Right. That's amazing. And that connection to the inner self seems to be the kind of core difference in what you're describing between like the younger people and the older people. Why do you think that goes away, and what can we do to make sure that we always maintain a strong connection there?
I think it's resolving itself in a lot of ways, I have to say. I see what I do see. I mean, most of the people when I talk to young people, I'm always shocked. They know about Reiki. They know about, meditation. It's such a normal part of the collective consciousness now, and the dialogue. My generation are the ones that, they're coming to it now. They're being introduced to it now, and, they're opening up to it now. But, so I just, I'm really impressed. I mean, there's very little like I have to do when I meet people that are the younger generation. I mean, I do meditation class through COVID. Actually, I did a couple of meditation classes in person, by the way, safely distancing with like a small group. My family, the young people in my family, they were like, Auntie Evie, can you do a meditation class? We're talking shamanism. And they were just so open. So you guys already get it, right? My generation, they're coming along. Part of it for me, they're coming along with me because I wear my crazy on my sleeve. I've never made apologies for seeing things alternatively, even though my peer group until the last few years were very mainstream. But I kept to my truth, and now they're seeing that it works in a way that they don't understand, but it's effective. So now they want to be on board. But yeah, with you guys, I would say stop listening to people older than the age of 35. Really.
What about
I mean, I don't think any.
Well, there's something to wisdom though that older people have, right? Like yourself.
Yeah, I think yes, but my wisdom came from keeping the magic in my imagination alive. Like I have to say, one of the things that kept me going in my life when I was going through my challenges as a child is I always had this imagination, and I carried it out even into my adulthood. So not that older people aren't wise, but for example, Benjamin Franklin and some of the founding fathers, even though some of them are getting a bad rep right now, we can learn from them. I love me some Ben Franklin, and I don't know if he had slaves, but boy, he's one of my favorite founding fathers. But everything he did before the age of 30. All of his practical wisdoms and the things he innovated, he did before 30. So, there's so much connection to source cosmic wisdom that you have before the layers of belief systems from our parents and society. So don't take for granted your cosmic connection and closeness in proximity in age to your source connection. We are wise. I think what we get, too many old people get credited with being wise. Just because they're old and they're a little slower to be jerks, I mean, I know a lot of like older people that were monsters when they were younger, and now they're 80 and their speech is slow. You think they're doing breath work. No, they're just too sick and tired. I mean, you think those guys up in, those Congress people or the people up in those old politicians are wise. They're just slow, and their medication like makes them drowsy. That's not wisdom. When I'm confused, that was wisdom.
Important to be discerning there, I guess.
Yeah, I really say tap into, just really start looking at yourselves for answers, because our generation were not wise. We didn't have, the elder generation is not the ones coming up with innovative concepts and ideas that are applicable for this planet, for your environment, for your bodies. We didn't have those answers for you. Your generation, because it's a marketing, talk about expired marketing again. It's not true just because we tell you when you get old, you become wise. What did that generation do for the planet? Not that I'm discrediting our yayas and all these wonderful great cooks and, all the wonderful grandfathers. Absolutely, especially in the maybe 200 years ago. But the last set of older, supposedly wise teachers and people that came and ran this government, they were not wise. Look at the planet we're in. I mean,
Right.
by your works you shall know them. Was that wisdom? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So that's my take on older people and wisdom.
Well said. Oh,
Well, it's I don't know. I'll probably get a lot of flack from my older friends from it, but it's
yeah, we'll
what I
hear what they
believe.
say. So I
Yeah.
think we should wrap up soon, but I want to ask a few more questions. Earlier, we were talking about this transition to a new consciousness, to a new earth, and how we're going through this period of healing trauma, essentially. What does the world look like that we're moving into, both on the personal level as well as maybe on a global social level?
Well, that world depends on each individual. It independ and that has so much to do with, again, understanding and moving yourself. The part of the truth and the new consciousness is understanding that you are the divine creator, and that your expectation is basic quantum mechanics, governs the future outcome. And so it's really important to start deciding individually, and then also aligning your interactions and your community with people that also understand the importance of that vision within themselves, to start dreaming. That's what shamans do, individually, of the future they want. Because that's why dreams are such a big part of the marketing, the American dream. But if, the American dream that was marketed for profit, right? So let's take back our American dream and dream individually, and then align your individual dream of a positive future. It's just physics. At the end of the day, if you take out all the ceremony and the incense and the meditation and the mudras, it's just energy. And energy goes where your focus goes. So what future do you want? One of the great tools that I tell people to do to help anchor themselves in balance through the chaos is a simple journaling technique, which is, I wrote down, and I do it every year, December 31st, 2019. I wrote down December 31st, 2020, even before I knew what it was gonna look like, what I knew 2020 would be for me, with deep gratitude. I said, thank you. I'm so grateful that 2020 was so incredibly enlightening. I was able to grow and evolve and find peace and prosperity in all areas of my life. So I anchored my future already. So no matter what happens in 2020. So if you want to say, well, what's my GPS for 2020? You create that. And we can all do that. And the more of us are aware of that, we then dream collectively a future that we want.
Right.
Because the future is not going to come from the outside of you. It's going to
Yeah.
come from inside of you.
True that. That's really cool. So it's really like about seeing the future that you want, as essentially claiming the future that you want as if it's already happened, and letting essentially synchronicity and hard work,
The universe.
and the
And-
flow guide you.
And then the hard work changes into more like, effortless. It's just like, as soon as you anchor that, it just like things shift and move. It's like it starts flowing like a wave, and all these a wave of possibilities. And,
Right.
and that's how it works. That's it. You can't, the biggest thing is to, as wonderful as the collective is, the individual dream is incredibly doable, tangible, and powerful. Because if you cannot dream for yourself and you're waiting to dream with the collective, you will be lost and overwhelmed and swept up in the collective confusion. So create your own dream, and then, everything else follows from that. Dream your own future.
That's wonderful. I think that's a great stopping point.
Yeah.
Good note to end on. where can people learn more about your work and find you?
Well, my website, safeholistic.guru, and it's a collaborative. I'm the founding practitioner, but I work and vet some really wonderful people. We're just actually retweaking some things on the site. We use shamanic healing and shamanic practices as a core part of what we offer to our clients, and it's a holistic approach. So we offer healing, meditation, yoga, nutrition, and course, like with Enlightenment now. We don't have social media because we don't encourage you to look outside of yourself for anything. But you can find more information again at safeholistic.guru.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yay.
Well, this has been such a
Thank you.
pleasure. Always great to see you and chat.
Always great. Yeah. we could do this till next year, and we would have stuff to talk about.
Endless conversation, and there's so many questions that we'll have to say for another time. But yes, thank you again. This has been great. And for people listening, if you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to leave a review on iTunes. That would be wonderful. Or take a look at our website at alifeeconomy.com and share it with a friend. We'll be back on July 31st in 2 weeks with Claudia Muhlenweg talking about the Bates method and how we can improve our eyesight without the need for glasses. So that should be a very interesting conversation. See you soon.